watch Romulus with an audience, and he's here to watch it with you all. He's one of the stars of Alien Romulus, David Jonsson.
This really means so much to me, watching you guys watch this. I don't know what to expect. I've never seen this film. But I hope you guys really did enjoy it, and thank you for showing us so much love. It means the world to myself, Katie, all of us. I will say that Fede is really sorry he couldn't be here today, but I think he's got a little message for you guys. Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm Fede Alvarez. I'm totally bummed that I cannot be with you guys there tonight. I would have loved to share the movie again with an audience and watch it with you. You're the best audience out there. I missed it once, I missed it twice. I hope the third time I don't miss it. Before you start watching the movie, I want to tell you about a bit of a trivia you might not know. That in 2006 was the last time that something happened. It was the last time that a big studio movie was released on VHS. 2006, that was the last time. That was, you know the movie? So anybody knows what's the last movie ever edited on
History of
VHS?
Violence!
Yeah, that guy over there probably knows. It's a history of violence, but and I thought maybe we should fix that. So that's big news for you guys. We're doing for our movie a special edition. Alien, beautiful special edition VHS, the whole movie as it used to be. So for this few of you like me that still have your VHS around, get this baby. Enjoy the movie, guys.
Alien Romulus, starting with actor David Jonsson. Isabela Merced, okay, straight. All right, they will be here in just a minute. Okay. Just curious, who here saw that for the first time tonight? Pretty great, right? Isabela Merced, who plays Kay. How about the supervising sound editor Lee Gilmore here? VHS artist Matthew Ferguson. David Jonsson. And legacy effects artist Mahan. So, by the way, I just wanted to mention that VHS limited edition that you had a special announcement about before. That's going to be coming out on December 3rd, so that's when you can be able to look out for that. And I guess we could kick things off with you, Matt, in terms of talking about the VHS release, and just talk a little bit about how you came to be involved with that and what your approach was.
They asked me to do it, and I said yes. No, I did a poster in the UK and the US, and I guess that went down well, and then I heard Fede wanted it for this VHS, so we just went from there.
Now, were you an Alien fan? Were you a fan of the whole franchise coming into this?
Yes, massive. So the poster is kind of homaging the original Alien poster a little bit.
Well, that's,
There you go.
that actually leads me to a question for everybody else on the panel, which is, the great thing about watching this movie tonight, back to back with the first Alien, is you get a sense of what a love letter this one is to the first Alien and also to James Cameron's Aliens. And I'm curious, in terms of the approach that you all took, where you wanted to kind of pay tribute to the original stuff and where you wanted to take it in new directions. For example, Shane, you have a history. I mean, in fact, let's start with that. You have a history with these movies. Talk a little bit about how you first became involved with the Alien franchise.
Well, it's very special to me because I saw the first film in '79. I was 15, I think. But I already knew that I wanted to move to Hollywood to make creature films and horror films. And my first reaction was I was very upset because I thought, what can I ever do in the future that's going to be as great as that? I was depressed for like the longest time. Like Gear's design and the overall film, the music, the direction, and it's just one of those uncanny things where 7 years later, I was at Pinewood doing the sequel on Aliens with James Cameron, and that was only because of working with Stan Winston and James on the Terminator. And that, it all came together in that kind of miraculous way. And we weren't involved with an Alien film for many, many years until Betty called out of the blue for this film. And so it was a surprise to me. And so it was like an explosion of creativity to get back into it. And the cast is amazing, and every day I was just so happy to wake up and go to the studio and work on this film. I didn't want it to end, actually.
Isabella and David, did you feel the same way? I mean, what's it like to be an actor and step on the stage and be in an Alien movie?
No, it's a weird film, isn't it? It's weird. No, listen, I love films that are genre films that break the genre, and I think Alien, the one that really created from the beginning, is exactly that. What I think our film does is the same thing but differently. And I think that's what we all attempted to do. Shane and everyone that came on board to do this film really wanted to do that. I think we brought a lot more to the wonderful franchise that was Alien. So I think I'm buzzing, bro. Yeah.
How long were we in Hungary for?
5 months.
Yeah, and it was just us on the same few stages, going to our same little dressing rooms, filming it chronologically, and it was like an acting camp as well. And yeah, I only got one scene with you really where it was just us, and it was very cool to watch. You just would slip into character like that. It was very impressive.
The one I remember actually was the one where Andy doesn't open the door.
Yeah, thanks for that.
On the inside, I didn't feel good.
Well, that's really interesting. That's interesting you say you shot it chronologically. That's very unusual for a movie of this scale. Talk a little bit about that decision and what kind of conversations you had about Faye with it and what that gave you in the movie as actors.
Well, it was, I think it's always helpful to shoot chronologically because you kind of can make your choices in the moment and follow them through. The bad thing about shooting chronologically because if you make a bad choice, you've got to follow it through. So there's risks on both sides, but it was really a wonderful thing that Faye gave us, especially with a film that's heavy on effects, heavy on, those wonderful special effects that we have. It's harder to do, and as actors, it's really helpful to do the story as you feel it, as you go through it. So it was certainly compromises from the special effects side, from the sound side, from everyone's side to shoot this as authentically as possible, and that's what chronological gave us, I would say. Yeah.
Well, and Lee, I want to ask you a question sort of similar to Shane, which is, one of the things that's really cool about this movie, watching it tonight, is like watching it back to back with the first one, is there are a lot, the sound, it's sort of faithful to the spirit of the original, but you're not exactly repeating it. It doesn't really, they're not the same sounds, but they're kind of in the same universe. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your approach in terms of how you wanted to stay faithful to Ridley's original and, but sort of make it work for a contemporary movie.
Well, when we got the job, I mean, this was just, that's very cliche to call something a dream job, but this was a dream job for me. I just felt like you could, bury me in the ground, add it for you. That was great. And it was so great to have Faye with the vision that he had to have it so faithful to 79, and so we tried to mimic that with the sound, and 79 is like my most favorite sound movie ever. The stromal that sequence is just like, oh, it's like, it doesn't get any better than that, and the fact that we got to do ours with the echo probe turning on, it was just like, you got to pinch me. It was like Christmas every day, So we really focused on recreating sound. We didn't want to like repurpose and reuse. We didn't want to turn into like a copy paste deal because it just sort of felt like we were cheating a little bit. So we just tried to get things that were very much in the same spirit of 79, like on the mix stage and everything. We kept always telling ourselves, this is past the vibe check, is what we kept saying. If it sounded too shiny, if it sounded too modern, too hip, too cool, too Marvel or whatever, throw it out the door. So everything just needed to sound chunky, electromechanical. Every switch they flip's got to be doing something, like that Corbelin takeoff is crazy because every little thing that Navarro hits, something in the ship is groaning and bellowing and everything. So we just try to keep it in that 79 spirit of, analog, gritty nastiness, and then also make it as gross sounding as possible.
Well, that's what's cool about it, those two sides. It's very realistic sound in some ways, but then there's also obviously things like, we all know what, or we can imagine what a ship turning on is going to sound like. We can imagine what machinery sounds like. No one really knows what the sound's going to be of that thing that comes out of Isabela at the end of the movie. So, talk a little bit about your approach to stuff like that. Like, how do you approach doing the sound for some of the gooier creature sequences?
Well, it's very weird to be sitting next to Kay when I worked on her birth scene for weeks.
It's our first time meeting, I think.
Yeah, very, very intimate already. There was a lot of recordings. It's actually me throwing up. It's when she, finally,
Wait, is that pre-recorded, or
Yeah.
do you have that on deck at all
I
times?
do. It's locked and loaded. We went to Ralph's and went to the meat department and just asked, like, are you throwing out any meat? And they gave me like a 15-pound bag of like meat bits. And I had no idea what it was. It was just all in this one sack together. So we bought that, got a couple crabs, lobsters, that kind of stuff.
Did you charge Disney?
No, but it still smells really bad in my office. But we just like went to town making stuff as gross as possible, and then that was all from like the chest burster, and I don't know what the technical term is, but at work we call it the space badge. So technical term, it's in the script, space badge.
That wasn't me.
Okay, there we go. So we just try to keep it, super, super gross. Like Navarro when the chest burster comes out, all that ribcage stuff. I had a tree that fell down in my backyard, and so that's like a lot of me like twisting the roots and stuff. So we just try to get super creative and super gross, and I just my goal was, how can I make this so gross that my mom's gonna be disappointed in me? That's what I aim for.
Mission accomplished. Well, Shane, talk a little bit about the Xenomorph, and it's such a sort of iconic creature in an Alien franchise, and talk a little bit about working on that here and what your approach was, and again, kind of, what you wanted to keep that you loved about the original movies, and what you wanted to sort of add to it this time.
Well, it's very difficult because the Giger paintings and the Giger design is so strong, and you can either copy it verbatim, or you can recreate the first film verbatim, like 100%, or you can add a little bit of your own creation to it, which is what you really should do because it's a standalone film. So our approach was to kind of take the methodology of the Queen, because what I didn't want to do and I speak collectively from the team at Legacy, but what you don't want is just a man in a suit. And it's very interesting to go from the first film directly to this film, because what Ridley produced was so impressive, but you do see the advance of 30, 40 years of not only the visuals but sound, but it still works amazingly. But like I noticed immediately the sound difference and like the overall scope. But you can have the most amazing surface details on a very thin actor, but when it's backlit, it's merely a guy wearing a wetsuit and a long head. So the approach, what I mean by the Queen is, it's like a very non-human structure. It's a very narrow waist. Our Xena was 8 feet tall. It had very long arms and very long legs. And it's the hero animatronic was basically a robot. It was, if you look at it, it really looks like the Terminator. It's a very strong robot. And then we had a lightweight version, which is used in a couple scenes, and it's at the end of the hallway when David's lying down in the hive. You can see it. And then we do have a man in a suit for shots that are like when he's coming out of the cocoon. You have to break it down that way. But in terms of the look, I really, again, the royal eye, we wanted it to feel like Year's work, but we wanted it to be signature to Fede's movie, you know. So the tendons look a little different than what Carl Rambaldi did, and what Carl did was amazing. And the surfaces were more rough, not just glassy smooth, which was Fede's want of it being like, if you touched it, you would rip your hands. You know, it had textures to it, and that's where the fun is. You know, at first blush, it's a xenomorph, but when you really look at it, it's unique to this movie. That's the approach.
And what is interacting with these practical effects like for you as actors? Talk a little bit about that experience.
Okay, Jacob. I mean, I would say I had a fake body. That was really cool, and the egg actually came out of the fake body. That was also really cool. Like I was hidden underneath, sitting up straight, and all I would have to do is lean back, and it looked like me. And then when it came to the xenomorph, it was really cool to see him and our lovely actors in the suits just hanging out in between takes. Like they would ask for water, but they needed a straw. You would see them drinking out of the neck of the xenomorph. Because it kind of sits, the head sits on them like a hat, like a sun hat. It's nice.
Well, and David, you know, talk a little bit about shooting some of that stuff, like the zero gravity scenes and things like that.
But they were as practical as possible. You know, we did have some harnesses and was wired up, but we climbed and we did a lot of that core work, shall we say. You know, it was grueling. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was definitely not an easy shoot at all. We did some of those zero gravity scenes that took weeks to do. Me, Katie, all of us was coming and we were like, oh my god, okay, come on. You know, it was tough stuff to do, but we knew we were kind of putting something in together that felt like it was going to feel authentic and true, and I think that's what's on the screen.
Now, in terms of playing a synthetic, did you go back and look at the Ian Holm or Lance Henriksen performances in the earlier movies, and was there anything you kind of took from those or not, or did you want to just make this guy your own thing?
No, I didn't, but that's only because then I'm glazing in my head, you know what I mean? Like I've got the references. No, I mean, look, all you want to do is kind of make something true. You shouldn't compare yourself as an actor to anything. Other people do that for you. You know, you should just do what you know to feel right. I really wanted to play with, because Andy's unique in the synthetic universe where he's kind of got, he starts off kind of functioning and then kind of has a glow up, as I like to say. And I really wanted to play with all of me. You know, like, I think every single muscle was like feeling something, and I wanted to like just play with that. I think there's other synthetics which are just brilliant, like Michael Fassbender's, riders who are like really good at like glass eyes, and that's wonderful. But I didn't want Andy to be that. I wanted him to have a to be feeling something to the point where it's like sociopathic, maybe psychopathic. You know what I mean? I thought tracking that was kind of fun. So yeah.
Lee, something I wanted to ask you about is, I'm curious how early you come on with like this, because I read somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Fede actually wanted some of the sound design and effects like ahead of time, like he wanted them for production.
Yeah, so we normally don't come on until like after the director's cuts, so pretty late in the process. But when we initially met with Fede before they even shot, and he requested that we just kind of come up with some backgrounds so they could play on set, just to kind of give everybody the sense of scale, so they knew like how to project, all that kind of stuff. So it was difficult because all we had was a script, so I'm like, well, I think in my head this is what I'm imagining the cryo chamber to look like. So come up with sounds for that, or I know that, I'm such a super nerd for 79 that these hallways have got to be like industrial and chuggy and rhythmic and all that stuff. So we made about 20 or so sounds, some Xeno sounds like that, and sent them off to Fede, which they used on the set, and it turned out really rad because all the sounds kind of matched what the locations ended up looking like. So by the time we actually got into post, it was almost like a lot of the backgrounds had already kind of cut themselves.
Well, what are some of the kind of guiding principles for you in terms of using the sound design to create a sense of anxiety and unease? Because I think that's something this movie does really, really well.
It's all about, just dynamics, silence and negative space is like a real weapon, and just because we're doing sound doesn't mean that it has to be slathered all over the place, and to really pick our moments. And, a great example of that is like the first time the Offspring shows up, I've seen this with the crowd, I don't know how many times now, and every time you hear the whole theater's buttholes close up. He shows up and there's no sound. And, we spent like weeks coming up with the sound of this Offspring, get to the stage and Fede's like, what have they been doing? And like, that's not gonna work. And then like, okay, let's try it. Like, oh, it totally works. It's so scary and it's got no sound in it at all, So you have, things like that, and then, you just, rip your head off with a pulse rifle, all that kind of stuff. So it's just about trying to find dynamics and, we call it the hide and seek scene, which was, when they're walking through the hallway with the facehuggers. And again, that was a moment that we really designed up with tons of layers, and the facehuggers had little vocals and everything. And then we found out, these guys are way scarier if all you hear are their claws, and just the atmos and everything being by home, you don't know where they're at. And it was cool once we stripped out all the vocals because it's like they were listening, for Andy and the game. So it was a real balance of, when to play your hand and when to pull back and just kind of let silence work for you.
Now, Shane, another thing that's a cool callback to the original here, obviously, is the Ian Holm character. Did you work on that puppet or whatever it was that we were looking at? And if so, talk a little bit about how that was created.
Yeah, that was an idea that came late in the production schedule. It was a great idea. The original character was a female science officer, and it would have been an actress, much like in a makeup and sort of in a half suit, like, or a half creation under a set, but it would not have been an animatronic creation. And it was a very interesting day because we Lindsay and I got a call to an emergency Zoom call with Fede, and it was like a Sunday or something, and it was like super important, and we're like, oh, I think we're gonna get And he goes, okay, we have this idea, and we want Rook to be a model that looks just like Ash. And I was like, that's awesome. And then I thought, that's terrifying. Because it was the first thing up for us. And you have to understand, and when you watch the first film tonight, Ian was 43, I think, in '79. And there was no record of a mold of his face, even though they made one when Yaphet bashes his head off with the fire extinguisher. Nothing existed. There was no digital scan back then. There was nothing. So what we had to do was figure out, like, how are we going to resurrect a man who is deceased from 1979 and make it believable and make it a character that can act with these wonderful actors, like in a scene multiple times. And so you just rise to the challenge and you say, okay, we're going to take it as far as we can with an animatronic. We will need the help of visual effects here and there to bridge it. And what it ended up being was a portrait sculpture from photographs that was then scanned and then put into the computer and kind of worked even a little further. A silicone face that is then given extreme animatronic mechanisms underneath. They found an actor that they did all the lines with, and then we pre-programmed all of the lines that were on a track. Then that was a recorded system that could play back, so it would do it every time the same way in terms of the face movement. And then the left hand was completely eaten away, and that was animatronic. The torso is all, eaten away and it's lit. The right hand is my friend Chris Swift's hand underneath next to me, and I'm the idiot with my hand up inside his head, moving his head. So we're crammed underneath the desk. So we had to work with the set construction to kind of hide us inside there. And so we're a combination of animatronics, sophisticated animatronics, and old school sort of like hand puppetry plus a real hand. So the real hand really helps fool you with touching keys and touching, grabbing things. And it was pretty scary because we just didn't have a lot of time to do it. Because his wife didn't want to agree to it for a long time because, rightfully so, she didn't know if it was going to be making fun of him or something, but so we lost a couple of months, But ultimately I'm very proud of it because I think it works pretty well, I don't think anyone realizes how difficult that was to hold on.
It does make me think of those takes sometimes, it's brilliant, right? But there are these wonderful moments as an actor where there's many takes where we all got it wrong. Like we do something, start saying the line, it's like, oh, but stop, do it again, We did that. On their side, it was the funniest thing sometimes because at times it was like marvelous. Like you see this animatronic creature was shooting up the back and someone on the side, and everyone was like, 5 people are doing 10 things at once. And at other times, like, we're acting, giving it our all, and then, the track is like saying the lines, and they're just like, not moving. Do you know what I mean? And I'm saying that as a story just because I think it's the fun thing about filmmaking, you made it work, you put it all together with no time, and I think we all kind of felt that, you didn't get the film until after. It's crazy. So, yeah.
It was a challenge, but I'm very proud of it at this point.
Well, I think, that sort of speaks to, the way you described the creation of that whole thing, speaks to what I think makes the movie great, which is that it is this combination, it's like what effect or what technique is right for each thing, some of it's visual effects, some of it's practical, some of it's very old-fashioned, some of it's very modern, and it really comes together beautifully. David, I'm going to give you the last word here because you said that you watched the movie for the first time with an audience tonight. What was that experience like for you, and how did you see the movie differently through everyone else's eyes?
You guys were really locked in, man. I'm there like watching this, I'm like, what's happening? You guys just like, shh. No, it's honestly, you know, this is why we do it, right? You know, I definitely get my pleasure when I'm doing the movie, but it's an honor to watch people watching like the film and actually engaging with it. You guys were so there. No, it was awesome. Thank you guys, like, for supporting the film.
It's not easy to follow the original Alien and hold up, but you guys did that. It was a great double feature. The last thing I want to say to everybody before we wrap it up is just one last present for the audience, which is on your way out, you will get a signed poster of Matt's VHS art. So grab one of those. Thank you, everybody.